I want to say just a word on Prozac Weekly. Seraphim and Prozac Weekly are no longer marketed. When pharmaceutical companies lose their patent on brand name medications and other companies are allowed to sell generic preparations of the drug, the original company will often rebrand the medication in order to hold on to some of the market share for their product. And this was the case with Seraphim. It's just Prozac. But a more aggressive strategy involves obtaining a new patent for a medication by either slightly tweaking the molecule so that legally it's now a new compound, or else revamping the delivery system by pairing it with a different vehicle or placing it in a new type of capsule. Although the pharmaceutical companies spend many hundreds of millions of dollars developing and marketing these novel preparations, many times it amounts to nothing more than a marketing ploy. The most common scheme is to take a drug and place it in an extended release formulation. Prozac Weekly was even worse. It was 90 milligrams of good old fluoxetine in a fancy enteric-coated capsule that dissolved a little more slowly and thus released the medication more slowly, but that was not what allowed for the once-weekly dosing. It was fluoxetine's exceptionally long half-life that facilitated once-weekly dosing. And there's nothing new about the half-life. The generic preparations would have the same half-life. Generic norfluoxetine is still going to have that same half-life, and you could, in theory, take it once a week for some patients. As a psychiatrist, I never recommend once-weekly dosing of any antidepressant. The only reason to dose it once a week instead of every day is apparently a matter of convenience, although that's arguable since it can actually be more challenging to remember to take your medication if you only take it once a week as opposed to every day. If you also have patients who have difficulty swallowing or who are resistant to taking their medication, like for example children or patients with dementia, then maybe having that battle once a week is better or easier than having to struggle with that every day. But otherwise, I never recommend once weekly dosing. But if I were going to recommend once weekly dosing of Prozac, I certainly wouldn't tell the patient to go out and buy brand name Prozac Weekly. When it was first released, the manufacturer touted the fact that once weekly dosing would allow individuals to feel, quote, less daily dependence on the need for medication that many patients find stigmatizing. So they were actually capitulating to it. But this was misleading because taking a medication once a week doesn't change the fact that individuals who are clinically depressed do in fact require daily levels of the medication, which this long half-life allows for, even when it's not being taken every day. And that's really once you get to steady state. So once you've been taking the medication for several weeks, which again with Prozac would take longer. So you really would want to switch to once weekly dosing once you've been taking it every day for 2 or 3 weeks. Marketing ploys aside, my own preference is to be completely upfront with patients and to educate them regarding the exact nature of their need for treatment, whatever that may be, whether it's because they have endogenous illness and they have an absolute need, in my opinion, for this medication, and whether they need to take it indefinitely for the rest of their lives, or whether we're really looking at short-term treatment. But in any case, I encourage destigmatization in other healthier and more honest ways. The last thing I would ever want to do as a psychiatrist is to downplay the physical nature of a patient's major mood disorder and to tell them, well, you can just take it once a week. You don't need to take it every day, as if to communicate that, your condition's not that big a deal. That's dishonest, it's misleading, and it's capitulating to stigma. You also would not want to lull that patient into a false sense of security by promoting the idea that their illness was not so serious because they, quote, only needs to take medication once a week, the way the manufacturers were trying. They're just trying to sell a product, so they'll say anything. But too many patients who truly need medication to function and remain safe already underestimate their need for treatment and eventually disregard their regimens, often with disastrous results. even after improving significantly. But if I ever were to recommend once weekly dosing, a patient could just as easily take generic fluoxetine once a week and save